In Numbers 27, we read about 5 sisters who were the daughters of Zelophehad. Their names were Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. The background of this story was that because Zelophehad, their father, had died, he left no sons, which meant that his daughters wouldn't be entitled to their father's inheritance or their father's portion, as up until then, the inheritance would only be passed down to the sons. However, in verse 2 of Numbers 27, it said, "They came forward," so the daughters came forward, "and stood before Moses, Eleazar the priest, the leaders, and the whole assembly at the entrance to the tent of meeting, and said, 'Our father died in the wilderness. He was not among Korah's followers who banded together against the Lord, but he died for his own sin and left no sons. Why should our father's name disappear from his clan? Because he has no son. Give us property among our father's relatives.'" In verse 5 it says, "So Moses brought their case before the Lord, and the Lord said to him, 'What Zelophehad's daughters are saying is right. You must certainly give them the property as an inheritance among their father's relatives, and give their father's inheritance to them.'" Verse 8 says, "Say to the Israelites," so say to everyone, "if a man dies and leaves no son, give his inheritance to his daughter. If he has no daughter, give his inheritance to his brothers." The scripture goes on further into what the order of the birthright should be. And in the last sentence of verse 11 it says, "And it shall be unto the children of Israel a statute of government, as the Lord commanded Moses." So it was made law from that day forward. And the second story I would like to share with you is found in Exodus chapter 1. In verse 15 it says, "The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, 'When you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him, but if it is a girl, let her live.' The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live." In verse 20 it said, "So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, they gave them families of their own." The third story I would like to share with you starts off in Judges 8:30. This is where we read about Gideon, who had 70 sons of his own. He had a lot of wives. He was a very rich man. And his concubine, who lived in Shechem, also bore him a son, whom he named Abimelech. By Judges 9, we introduced Abimelech's evil conspiracy against his 70 brothers, in that he went to his mother's brother's family in Shechem and said to them, Judges 9:2, he says to them, "Ask all the citizens of Shechem, which is better for you, to have all 70 sons of Jerubbaal, or Gideon's sons, rule over you, or just one man? Remember, I am of flesh and blood." So after the people of Shechem agreed with Abimelech, Abimelech went and killed his 70 brothers, except for one, Jotham, who escaped. And after that, they made Abimelech king. By verse 22 of this same chapter, it says, "After Abimelech had governed Israel 3 years, God stirred up animosity between Abimelech and the citizens of Shechem, so that they acted treacherously against Abimelech. God did this in order that the crime against Jerubbaal's 70 sons, the shedding of their blood, might be avenged on their brother Abimelech and on the citizens of Shechem, who had helped him murder his brothers." So eventually, in a very horrifying way, Abimelech destroys Shechem and its inhabitants. But after Abimelech destroyed Shechem, he goes on to the next town. This town is called Febreze. And here we read about the woman of Febreze. It says in verse 50, Next Abimelech went to Febreze and besieged it and captured it. Inside the city, however, was a strong tower, to which all the men and women, all the people of the city had fled. They had locked themselves in and climbed up on the tower roof. Abimelech went to the tower and attacked it. But as he approached the entrance to the tower to set it on fire, a woman dropped an upper millstone on his head and cracked his skull. Verse 54, it says, "Hurriedly he called his armor-bearer," so Abimelech called his armor-bearer as he was dying. And he said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and kill me, so they can't say a woman killed him. So his servant ran away. So his servant ran him through, and he died. And when the people or the Israelites saw that Abimelech was dead, they went home. In the past few years, the prominent voices advocating for women's rights have been relentless in selling us the idea that we as women, are less than, because we are constantly being robbed by men in particular of our identity and our opportunities to function in society. There is also a belief that because men seem to hold more high-powered positions than women, that this must mean that the injustices faced by women in society today has been and continues to be controlled by the evil patriarchy. This ideology builds up a case against men in the feminist activist mindset, which eventually leads to hostility and manifests as hate towards men in general. I am very aware of this ideology. I've got 2 boys, and I have a husband whom I adore. And I will not allow this to be taught in my household. I want to challenge this ideology today based on the stories of these women I've just shared with you. Their stories were written over 3,000 years ago. It was in the beginning of the Bible, which showed that women were an integral part of the change in their society then, just as we are in our society today. When the daughters of Zelipha had made their petition to Moses for a right to their father's portion, little did they know that their petition would end up in the highest court, where God ruled in their favor, and they were granted their petition. The midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. One commentary said that the midwives' refusal to follow Pharaoh's genocidal instructions may be the first known incident of civil disobedience in history. In another, it states that it agrees, calling them the earliest and in some ways the most powerful examples of resistance to an evil regime. And lastly, the woman of Febreze, whose action resulted in saving her own town and saving many lives from the wicked Abimelech. I know that the world sometimes likes us to believe that we cannot be happy as women, and we cannot feel safe until we make men pay, even for the sins that they didn't commit. But I would encourage every mother, every woman who is a child of God today, that we don't have to give in to the ideology of the world, that we don't have to be who they say we should be, but to look at the examples of old and take courage that God, from day one, has always been our advocate. And we too play an integral part of our society without the need to spread hate towards men or blame others for what we ourselves can do. For we are the daughters of Zelophehad. We are the Shiphrah and we are the Puahs. We are the women of Febreze.